Lauren Meckstroth, Vice President at Fahlgren Mortine, talks to host Doug Simon on PR's Top Pros Talk.
Excited to be talking about media relations. And Lauren, let's start with the importance of newsjacking.
I think newsjacking is so important because 9 times out of 10, you're not gonna have a brand, whether they have a service or a product that's relevant, to the media. They're not gonna have a lot of things to talk about all the time that are worthy of getting them on broadcast or, in the New York Times or any sort of, top national publication. So newsjacking is a great way to work around this. And it's just something that I think so many people, clients, brands, whatever it is, whatever sector they're in, can really take advantage of it just by consuming media. And so that's something that I tell clients all the time. If you want to be in certain media, which everyone has clients, and I would say almost all clients want to be in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or on CNBC. And so I really encourage them to consume that media, whether it's a specific section in that media, a specific journalist, a specific TV show, and really understand what drives those different types of publications and the news they cover, so that they can understand what that is themselves and what the components of those stories are. And a lot of times you'll see they'll start to understand, oh, you need a client story, you need revenue numbers of your latest quarter. And, for some that's not possible, for others it is.
Right.
And just lots of different components. And so I think newsjacking is a great way to really understand what drives news and then relate it back to clients, to get them to be included in the conversation.
What's your advice to identify if a trending topic is a good fit for your client?
Yeah, so this is super important. You never want to try to fit your client into a situation that they're just not really that they shouldn't be in, whether it's because they're not an expert or it's not really related. So what we do as we bring on clients and just ongoing, we do what we call a media trends analysis, which is to research the client, competitors, and just the topic that they are playing in and determine what are the topics being talked about, who are the reporters covering it, what are sort of all the different mediums that are covering it. Is it broadcast? Is it just sort of niche publications? And then also identifying the rock stars and the different spokespeople from sort of the biggest companies out there and what they're saying, and really look at what's driving the conversation and how fast it's changing. And then we bring all of that research to clients and really say, here's where we think you can fit in. And then also get the leaders and the spokespersons insights as well. So sometimes there's things that we'll bring clients and say, hey, we really think that you could hit on this. Here's some pieces that you could add to the conversation. And I think that's really important too. A lot of times with experts, they will think that they have an idea and that they have a point of view without necessarily realizing that that point of view has been shared many times before. And so that's what I think people like myself and others in the practice can add, is really educating them on here's where the conversation is and here's how you can actually add to it, whether it's a contrarian point of view, or just something that hasn't been said, because that's what journalists are looking for. I also love to tell my clients that feedback that I've gotten from journalists so often is that a lot of times clients don't want to tell a story that is just a problem. They want to have a solution, and that's not always what reporters are looking for. So as things are unfolding, if there is a problem that you're seeing, whether it's with a client or just like, for example, we work a lot in the AI space, and this is a industry that is literally just unfolding before our eyes. And so lots of problems are arising. If you don't have a solution to that problem, but if you have experience in how clients or customers of yours are experiencing that without even naming names, you can talk about that. And that's something that a reporter is going to be very interested in. And so that's one thing I like to really try to tell people is you don't always have to have the solution. The problem is enough. And that's, a personal choice with the brand and leadership if they're comfortable with that. But I think people would be really happy with the results if they sort of took those chances.
Yeah, and I think it's important you mention AI. We're even seeing it on the broadcast side for our clients. There's a tremendous amount of station interest in
Mm.
AI. If you can explain what things are about for their viewers and how it's going to be relevant to them, we've had good success with media tours in the AI space. I also want to speak to maybe a trend that I saw start. I give Ford credit after
Mm.
the auto industry near crash in 2008, going outside your vertical. They were very smart to start showing up at the Consumer Electronics Show and
Mhm.
other issues and try and position themselves as a tech company. Because if they were doing a story in the car industry, it was like, hey, will you still be around next year? Versus let's talk about the tech, which was safer. What's your take on going outside your vertical to find trending topics that you might be a fit for?
I think it all depends on the client and what your leadership is comfortable with. I think for Ford specifically, that was sort of genius because that was the conversation. Like, will they take the bailout money? Will they not? What's going to happen? Is our autos as we know it dying? And they pivoted to focus on something that was something that they were innovating and taking charge of and really trying to change the industry. So I think topics like that are fantastic if you have the buy-in from your leadership to do so. And I know that, one of the things we're going to talk about today are being risk adverse, or maybe some things that communicators should do. And I do think they should be less risk adverse. So something like that, taking a chance on a topic that is something that you feel like you can own and there is potential for that narrative out there, that's a story people want to tell. Absolutely, you should reach for those. And because if it doesn't work, you can pivot again, and I think that's very smart.
Yeah, and finding the right medium can
Mhm.
also be something if you are risk adverse to help balance it out. I know morning TV news, they're usually, okay, we don't want this story, or if we want it, they're looking to do a positive. It's happy, it's upbeat. They're not looking to trash spokespeople who they've decided to interview on the station. How do you decide which medium to focus on? Obviously, broadcast, print, social, or combinations. Do you have a approach that you take?
Yeah, I think it's less on what you decide and more on what the actual angle is worth. So, broadcast is called broadcast because it derives from the term broad, meaning that this is a broad topic relevant to everyone. A company like Ford, of course, and all of the Fortune 500s have just that ability to get on a broadcast. I work with a lot of clients who are very niche and small, maybe not even considered challenger brands, and it's very hard to get a lot of those people to talk about things that are relevant to a really broad audience. So I would say it's more the angle. If you have something that you think can resonate with a very large audience, I'm talking millions and anywhere from 10 years old to 80, then yes, that's probably a great broadcast angle. And I would recommend pitching it. If you have something that is more niche, and you're trying to make it more broad, maybe it is a tech story, but you're trying to make it relevant outside, let's say, a specific sector, then I think you look at some of those large tech digital publications. And if you have something that is just maybe an announcement or things that historically a lot of publications cover that don't anymore, that's something that's good for social, something that you want to take advantage of on your own channels and share that out to make sure that your audience and your following is getting that information, knowing that a journalist probably will not cover that.
Right. And any mistakes that PR people should avoid. We always like to try and give people advice both on what's the good stuff to do and what's the stuff to do less of. So let's
Yeah.
start any mistakes to avoid.
Being risk adverse, I don't think that's necessarily a mistake, but I would encourage communicators to try more things as long as it makes sense. You really know, hopefully, your client, what they can speak to in the media. So you are the expert that they're looking for to really guide them. So that's kind of a superpower. You should use that to your advantage and really educate clients and help them get there, to figure out what makes sense. Try those out of the box ideas. A lot of some of those, more large scale ideas or activations are really taking off. And I love that. And then, I mean, a very common mistake that I think many people say is just know who you're pitching, know what you're pitching, make sure that it
Right.
makes sense. Don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. Like, there's so many journalists out there you don't need to send a pitch to 500 people. You could really hone in and send it to 10 people and probably get great coverage if it makes sense for them. And that's something that I feel like we get all the time in terms of feedback from journalists. And I would really love to see that narrative shift. That, I think I work with tons of PR people who are great at this and do a great job and really forge great relationships with journalists, which is what it's all about. So I would encourage people to do the research and really make sure that a specific angle for a specific publication makes sense.
That's really interesting. And one that I see is sometimes forgetting that with all the focus on influencers, that you can build your own people up to become influencers by getting them out there as spokespeople. We know by a 3-to-1 margin, local news producers prefer to actually have someone with a brand than a third party representing them. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
I love local news. I think you mentioned that, and just with the political cycle right now, I think the trust in local news is so high, and local news is a great resource for companies specifically trying to get their messages out, whether it is to one local audience or many. So I think just remembering that your spokespeople can be experts, and they often are. So really making them aware and helping them get to be experts on topics that are either trending in the media or something that they really want to get brand awareness about, and finding angles and ways that they can do that, whether it's on TV, whether that's through contributed content in digital publications or wherever it is. Finding the right fit is certainly possible.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about trust. We actually surveyed more than 1,000 consumers to ask them what they trusted more, local TV news or social media. It was 85 to 15%, and Republicans and Democrats were identical in their view. It was by a 2-to-1 margin, they trusted local TV news more than national news. It's been such a pleasure to speak with you and get a chance to help you share your great insights. Thanks so much for being with us.
Yes, thank you.